just going to introduce you. Everybody, welcome. Have a seat if you're not sitting, or stand if you want to stand. I'm Rocky. Welcome. This is Susan Stone. She's our speaker for, what month is it? It's October. Can you believe it?
What's the Halloween stuff over there?
I can't believe it. I don't know who I am. But anyway, this is Susan. She is a mother of grown twins. They are girls. And she's going to speak to us tonight about 11 minutes. Welcome, Susan Stone.
That is my best qualification, is that I'm a mom, and I do happen to have twins. I'm also a marriage and family therapist in private practice in the area. And I sometimes am on television, often on radio. And I wrote the book that we talked about last time, I think, the indulgence trap. But that's not exactly what we're speaking about tonight, though there is a crossover. How about, since we're a small group, if we go around and you tell me how many kids you have and how old they are?
I have 5-year-old twins. That's all. They're going to be 6 next month, though.
Okay.
A boy and a girl.
Okay.
Mine are 3.5.
We have 7-year-old boy twins and a 5-year-old daughter.
Okay.
I have almost 4-year-old boy twins.
I have 2 girls. They're 2.5.
2 girls, and they're about to turn 20 months.
Get an early start on this.
I have a boy and a girl. They turn 4 in July.
I have 4-year-old girls, 2 girls.
2-year-old boy girl.
Okay, we have very young children here. I told Rocky that I was going to make a little pitch at the beginning of my talk because I think this is such a great group that you need to know about. I'm on the board of an organization called Parents Education League, and you're familiar with it? Yeah. And its mission is to help parents find the best education and resources for their children. And we do all kinds of fairs. We're having a preschool fair this weekend. We do a kindergarten fair, a camp fair. We have done a learning differences fair. We have speakers, and we have advisories. If you are unsure of what way you'd like to go with your children once they get out of preschool, there is somebody you can speak to personally, one-on-one about your situation. We also have speakers who talk about navigating the LAUSD school system. What's a charter, what's a magnet, and how all of that works. And so it offers a lot of great stuff. And the website is just parentseducationleague.com. So it's a good thing to have in your arsenal. And there might be something there that interests you. Okay, on to our topic. You've probably already found out that parenting is the hardest job you ever do with the least preparation. You know, I have been advocating for years that they give at least a 1-semester parenting class in high school so that people have a little bit of information. Not that their high school grades will take it in, but it's a little bit of information. But you go into it blind. I know anybody who comes out to hear me talk at night, when you've had a long day, is really interested in raising good kids who are responsible and caring and hardworking and productive, and they grow into adults who are successful in their relationships and whatever their endeavors are. But how do you take the potential of a little baby who comes into the world, and 18 years later you turn out the kind of person that you'd like to raise? What goes on in between? Some aspects of parenting are pretty instinctive. I don't have people come to me and say, you know, what's good nutrition? Or does my child really benefit from education? Or is affection a good thing for them? What people come to talk to me about is teaching appropriate behavior and impulse control through limit setting. I'm so sorry, was that one potato chip?
Yeah.
both confused and conflicted. They know that they have to set limits and boundaries, and yet many parents are unsure of when and how to do that. And they also worry about them feeling oppressive and unloving if they do this with their children. And also worrying that they're going to alienate their children, which you'll come to see is a very unwarranted fear. To complicate the issue further, we are now aware that our style of parenting has a lot of impact on promoting or preventing self-esteem from development. And so when we choose our parenting techniques, we feel obliged to use those that will help us develop good self-esteem. Now, this is a kind of new thought in terms of parenting. How many of you think your parents were concerned about your self-esteem when they were setting limits and boundaries? You know, I never see a hand. One generation, it's going to change, and I'll start seeing hands. But parents in the past just did what was expedient without any consideration for the child's self-esteem. So we can't really use what your parents did as a model of what will achieve the twin goals of socializing your child and promoting good self-esteem. To make matters even more difficult, there are a couple of cultural issues that arise. Your children are not growing up with the same automatic respect for authority that previous generations did. And so that presents an extra challenge. And additionally, your children are growing up in a very diverse society. Do you know that LA is the most culturally diverse city in the United States? There are more languages spoken here than in any other city. So if you go back a few generations where everybody lived around the village square, everybody was doing the same thing in terms of raising their children. If you didn't know what to do, you looked at what your neighbor was doing. Or you felt free to discipline your neighbor's kid because you knew that their parents would do exactly the same thing. We don't have that anymore. You have multiple cultures. What did you have? Sorry. Can I make someone else a paper monitor since Rocky's
Yes. No, I'll do it.
Yeah. So you can't look at the person next to you to decide how you should handle your children, because their background is very different. Their value system is very different. So given all these challenges, how do you teach your child appropriate and productive ways of relating to the world and to other people? What we're going to do tonight is take a four-part approach to answering this question. The first thing we're going to do is look at the difference between your agenda as a parent and your child's agenda as a source of problems. Then I'm going to ask you to observe your parenting style, which is always very revealing for people. We're going to talk about why limit setting is a loving thing to do. And then finally, I'm going to give you a recipe for teaching children appropriate behavior that maintains self-esteem, addresses their feelings, and yet gives you the authority that you need to guide them through their childhood and through the rocky adolescent years, which are coming up inevitably. And so they'll become the kind of adults that you want them to be. So first, let's talk about agendas. Everybody knows what an agenda is. It's something that you want to accomplish during some period of time. Children's agendas and parents' agendas are not the same. If you have a normal, healthy child, their agenda is to explore this new world that they've only been in for a number of months, to reach out, to try new things, to understand simple concepts like gravity and textures and what's safe and what's not safe. And so they do all kinds of things to test out those notions. your agenda is that your child should be socialized. You want to teach them not to act on impulse, and as often as possible, avoid having them embarrass you too much. Now, let me give you an example of the friction between those agendas. Let's say you take your child to the movies. Some of you have children old enough where you might do that. You're standing in line, and your agenda is your child should stand next to you, not race around the other side of the building to see what's there, and you have to leave the line. They shouldn't be talking to strangers because you've been teaching them for years now. You know, you don't just talk to strangers. And they should generally comport themselves in a way that doesn't make you want to sink through the pavement. Now, is that their agenda? No, of course not. They are going to want to run around and see what's on the other side of the building. They are going to want to make new friends in line. If they're young enough, they might even see some old gum on the ground and see if it still has flavor in it. So while struggles are normal and unavoidable, if you understand that the source is this difference in agendas, you don't have to react so angrily. Yes, you have to set the limits. You're not allowed to run around the building. You're not supposed to talk to strangers. You don't pick stuff up from the ground. But you don't have to feel like your little child is defined. Now, if I were talking to you about teenagers, that would be a different story because they do become somewhat rebellious and try to push back against some of your rules. And that's a normal part of growing up too, but it's another story. But the next time you see your young child climbing up a bookcase or jumping off the couch, don't interpret it as them trying to drive you crazy or to make your day miserable. They've got some exploratory plan in mind. And you have to teach them what's safe and what's not, what's acceptable and what's not. But you don't have to be so angry about it if you understand about agendas. Now, neither you nor your child began your relationship as blank slates. As research shows us more and more every day, you can't pick up a magazine without reading about it. Children come into the world with a lot of characteristics already factory installed. They may be extroverted or introverted, they may be high-strung or easygoing, they may be strong-willed, but they come with a lot of stuff implanted. You don't come into the relationship as a blank slate either. You have your own temperament, you have your own childhood experiences that you're reacting to. So, given the interaction of these givens on the parent side and the kid's side, it means that your parenting style goes a long way towards determining how your child acts and reacts. And it's important to get to know each of your children so that your parenting style with each child is appropriate for who they are. You know, I always use the example of a child who is very mild-mannered and maybe even introverted and has a very extroverted parent. The parent may correct their behavior in a very boisterous way, shall we say. And it's kind of like killing a fly with a cannonball. You have to adjust your parenting style to who each of your children is. And even though they're twins, it doesn't mean that they're the same person. So, let me give you an example of how potent a parenting style is. One of the things that parents say to me often is, it's driving me crazy. My kids don't listen to me till I repeat myself 50 times. And I say to them, well, you know, how did they learn that it was 50 times? It's because you're willing to repeat yourself 50 times before they knew you mean business. And so even by the time a child is 2 or 3, they're sitting there going, okay, 47, 48, 49, oh, 50, now I have to pay attention. So the parent's style is training the child how to react. I want to talk about some other common parenting styles, and you may relate to one of these or more than one of these. One is what I call the overtalker or the preacher. This is the parent who, when their child doesn't stay within the limits and boundaries, talks to them about it, gives them examples from their childhood, tells them what the future's going to hold for them, uses morals and parables, and you just keep lecturing them till your child has put on his pajamas and gone to bed, and you're still getting that last word in. The problem with that is that it's one-way communication. Children can listen to very few words before they tune you out. You're not engaging them, so you're really not accomplishing much. You're just getting your frustration off your chest. The undertalker is really the opposite of this. This is the person who's busy or preoccupied with adult issues. Maybe it's work, maybe it's your marriage, maybe it's something going on in the family. And so when your child comes to talk to you about something, you barely look up from what you're doing. You just kind of go, if you even say that. Now, I know that children talk from the time they open their eyes to the time they go to sleep, and then they talk in their sleep. So it's not like you can be tuned in every minute of every day. But you do want to listen for when your child has something important to tell you. And even if you can't really have a conversation at that moment, you can say to them, I really am interested in what you have to say. Let's make a date that after dinner or bedtime or during your bath. We'll talk about that. Because if children can't get attention in appropriate ways, they get attention in much less pleasant ways. Because negative attention is better than no attention. Another kind of parenting style is what I call the over-listener. This is the parent who has made a decision that they really want to be there emotionally for their child. So your child comes home from school and says, Johnny didn't want to play with me today. And you say, oh my God, what happened? What did he do? What did you do? What did the teacher say? Oh, what are you going to do tomorrow? And your child, who might just have been reporting something, all of a sudden has a great tragedy. If this is how you answer frequently, your child is going to stop talking to you. Because they not only have the little bit of a Johnny problem, maybe, but they have the problem of this unhappy parent who's all upset by the so it discourages children from talking to you. The personal offender is the parent who, when they're frustrated and overwhelmed with parenting or with life, complains, name calls, imitates or belittles their children. You find yourself saying things that in your right mind you would not say, which is like, you're acting like a baby. Why do you always have to be so difficult? You're so selfish. When a parent labels their child in that way, you may think you're just blowing off steam and it doesn't mean anything. But if you don't go back and correct it, that label can stick with a child for a lifetime. That's how important your assessment of them is. So if you lose it someday and you say one of those things, always go back and say, you know, I was having a hard day, I'm sorry I said that, you're not a selfish person, you were doing something that wasn't very kind when I said that, but you're not a selfish person. So you're distinguishing their whole character from just a piece of behavior. The helpless style of parenting is the parent who has just really had it up to here. They give in, they bribe their children, anything just to not have conflict. What ends up happening though with these kids is that they become tyrants in the family. You get like a 2-foot-tall tyrant. And children, as much as it seems like they want to do everything they want to do and be in charge, really don't. Children who are in charge of the household have a lot of fears. It makes them feel very insecure that there's not a big person in charge. When I have a kid come into my office who has a lot of diffuse fears, afraid of going for a play date, afraid of animals, afraid of the dark, afraid of this, afraid of that, I can make a pretty good guess that the parent is not in charge of that household. And so the child is just kind of feeling freaked out. The indulgent parent is the one who feels that they are actually being more loving by giving their child whatever they want. And it also helps them slide through the day without any conflict. If you do that, this is what my book is about, is you end up compromising the values that you want to teach your children. They don't develop the characteristics that you want them to have. They become what people call spoiled brats, but what I call victims of indulgence. Then there's the authoritarian parent. This is the forceful, bullying parent who intimidates their child into cooperating. And that can work. The problem is that your child may become fearful of you, or they may start to feel alienated from you. And at some point, they may become very rebellious. There's some children who will just fold, and there are other children who become very rebellious, especially during the teenage years. The screamer is a very popular parenting style. Because it's a kind of a natural thing to do when you're frustrated. But there are some problems with screaming. And one of them is that it interferes with the development of trust. Because your little child doesn't understand why you went from being loving mommy or daddy just screaming mommy and daddy, because they don't understand cause and effect that well. They don't know it's because they just broke a dozen eggs all over the floor because they thought that would be fun to do. They just know all of a sudden you're not being nice to them anymore. Another problem with screaming is that if you scream, your child's going to be a screamer. Because we model for children how to handle emotions. And if what we do is scream, then you're going to be screaming at each other. And particularly for the dads in the audience, I want to mention that when men yell, it's very intimidating. It almost can feel like a physical assault when you start to back up from it. And so a child can start to really keep their distance from that parent. So dads in particular need to be careful about that. Then there's the ever popular threatener. This is the parent who believes that this finger has magic powers. If you just shake it at your child and say, you're going to get it, even if you don't say what it is, that they're magically going to fall in line. But remember that your children are observing you from birth. They know every facial expression, every bit of body language, the tone of your voice. And if they have seen you do this and not follow through, they go, oh yeah, the finger, there it is again. And they don't take you seriously. So, this is the audience participation part. When I say the word discipline, what does that connote for you?
Teaching.
Okay. Oh, you're not supposed to cheat. Does discipline connote anything else for anybody?
I mean, I always associate it with punishment.
A lot of people think that.
Consequences.
Okay.
For actions.
Okay. Any other thoughts?
Control.
Okay.
Order.
Okay. Good answers. purest definition of discipline is what you said, because you read ahead, which is teaching. A disciple, after all, is somebody you teach, who follows your teachings. I know that it can carry this heavy connotation of punishment. And if that's what you think of as discipline, then you're going to have a much harder time disciplining your child, teaching them. It's not about punishment. Punishment has to have an element of retribution in it. Oh, really? You did that to me? This is what I'm doing to you. That's not what we're talking about. We're teaching your child right from wrong, how to be in the world, how to interact with people, how to be competent, how to win, how to lose. So I want you to think of discipline, when I use that word, as a positive, as teaching. Now, the purpose of discipline, many purposes to discipline. First of all, children experience limits as love. I know they don't act that way. You say to them, you have to go to bed now, or you can't hit your brother, and they don't react by saying, oh, yes, and can I have a hug? They tend to have a negative reaction. But I'll share an anecdote with you that will explain how, in the long run, they experience this as love. Years ago, I had a mom come in to speak to me. She was a single mom. She had an 8-year-old boy and an older girl. The older girl was just doing the wrong thing. But she had no idea how to set limits and boundaries for this boy. And he was going to school if he felt like it. He ate nothing but junk food, which of course she was buying for him. He would stay up all night watching movies. But even that didn't bring her in for help. She came in for help when he started to cut up the furniture with scissors. Now, what was he saying to her?
And guidance.
Yeah. He was saying, are you ever going to stop me? How outrageous do I have to be for you to take care of this? He was pushing the boundaries to see when she would step up to the plate. So I worked with her for a while. It doesn't take that long to teach somebody to set limits. And I was also seeing the boy, because there was a lot of self-esteem damage that had been done by the treatment of her. And she was doing much better with it. And he came in one day and he sat down on my couch and he said, I don't know what you're saying to my mom, but I think she's starting to love me.
Aww.
I know. So that really is how children experience limits and boundaries, that you care enough about what they do. Another purpose of discipline is to teach impulse control, so children can think before they act. They don't just lash out because they're mad at somebody. They think about what the appropriate response is. And also that they can learn to delay gratification for long-term goals. And a third purpose of discipline is for you to raise likable children. I know a lot of parents are mostly concerned with having their children like them, as if that is the brass ring that you're going after. Children love their parents, unless you're some kind of really weird, abusive person. Even then, I've seen children who love their parents. But just because you set reasonable limits and boundaries doesn't mean your child isn't going to love you. But when parents get all involved in wondering if their children are going to love them, they're not teaching their children to be loved by others, to be likable children. Because they go out into the world, they go to preschool, they go to elementary school, or they have interactions with other adults, and they're not likable. Because they're demanding, they don't understand boundaries, they don't take no for an answer. And so their self-esteem is further damaged because adults respond to them